I didn't really plan to do this again, but I feel like I should step in and dispel some of the misinformation surrounding Dark Souls 4. You see, I recently made a video about the big Fromsoftware leak where we learned that they have another secret project in the works that is currently in the advanced stages of development, and it's not the Duskbloods. And in that video, I went over multiple different options that it could be, from a Dark Souls 3 remaster to Armored Core 7 to a brand new IP. It's all pretty interesting stuff, to be honest. And if you haven't heard about it and you want to go check that out, I'll leave a link to that video in the description. But the one I caught the most flack for was suggesting that it could be Dark Souls 4. Now, a lot of the comments were just people that were super excited for a potential new Dark Souls, and others were just theorizing about what it could potentially be, whether it's Dark Souls 4 or not. But a good portion of them were people that were just flabbergasted that I could even suggest that Dark Souls 4 was a possibility, and they were very quick to let me know about it. So in this video, I want to go over the 3 main arguments that I've found against Dark Souls 4 and why I think that they don't really stand in the way of it being made. Now, I want to be super clear right off the bat. This video is not meant to suggest that Dark Souls 4 is definitely coming, or that it is FromSoftware's next game, or anything like that. I'm simply trying to dispel some of the misinformation around it to show that it's not as impossible as people think it is. And if you're a FromSoftware fan like I am, that should excite you. I mean, I would think that people would be happy to hear that one of the most beloved franchises in history, and especially in the Souls genre, could potentially get another entry. But you would be surprised what people start to say when you suggest something like that. Now, none of it was like overtly rude or anything. Actually, I was kind of surprised at how respectful most people were. But there definitely were some clapbacks, and I don't think all of them really hold water. So let's get to the first one. The first one is that Miyazaki said that Dark Souls 3 was the end and that there will be no more Dark Souls. Now, this is the one that I covered originally in my video, so I'm not going to go super in depth on it. I will just let you go to the description and follow the link, and you can watch what I said there if you want to get more detail on it. But essentially, this is the rundown. Miyazaki never said that Dark Souls was over. He said that it was over for him, in that he does not want to make another Dark Souls himself. But he also followed that up with explicitly saying that he would not stand in the way of another staff member from FromSoftware that would want to make another Dark Souls. Now, that obviously does not mean that they will make one, but what it does mean is that it's definitely not over. In fact, I would say that they left the door pretty wide open. Miyazaki went out of his way to let people know that he would be okay with another Dark Souls being made, as long as it wasn't him who made it. And we've seen this in the past with Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls 2 was not directed by Miyazaki himself. And I know DS2 gets a lot of hate from people online and in the Souls community, but honestly, I'm a DS2 apologist, so I don't really see it that way. So you might look at that and hear a negative. I look at that and I hear a positive. A new Dark Souls, even if it's not made by Miyazaki, I think would be a good thing. But more on that later. But we also saw this with Night Rain as well. Night Rain was directed by Junya Ishizaki. That game has gone on to sell 5 million copies to date, and I've had a ton of fun with it. I think it's a great game. Now, it has also got its fair share of hate from the Souls community for kind of veering from the traditional Souls formula, but anytime you make a change of any kind, you're going to catch some flack. But at the end of the day, Night Rain is an objective success and a really fun experience. So my point here is that we've already seen Miyazaki sort of handing the reins over to different senior staff members and allowing them to sink or sail on their own merits. And I would argue, for the most part, they've all sailed. But this brings me to my next kind of counter argument to address, which is that if Miyazaki doesn't make it, then we don't want it. And like I mentioned before, people who are proponents of this argument will oftentimes bring up Dark Souls 2 or Night Rain and point out all these bad things about them and then say, see, Miyazaki didn't make these, so if Dark Souls 4 does come and it's not made by Miyazaki, then it's gonna suck. Now, I would agree that a Miyazaki-made Dark Souls 4 is the best possible scenario for that game. However, it's kind of short-sighted to say that we would not accept anything else but that. Let's be real here. Miyazaki is not going to be around forever. He's getting up there in age. He's got to be like in his 50s or something by now. And so eventually, we will not have Miyazaki around to make games. So for the future of Fromsoftware, we need other talented people, people that he's mentored himself, to be able to make these experiences for us. Because when he's gone, it could mean the death of the genre if he doesn't have successors to pass these things down to. And if we as the community do not give these people our support when they step out and try to make their own game, even if they're changing some of the things we love, then we're hampering the genre in the future. I get it. You get attached to these things because they are big parts of what you have come to enjoy. Some of it is a big part of your childhood or a specific part of your life, or they got you through a really tough time. And you don't like to see, those types of things change necessarily. But you have to look down the line a little ways. And eventually, we're going to need these people to make us some Souls games, or else we won't have any. But aside from that, on a more short-sighted view, more game directors that were mentored and trusted by Miyazaki means that we get more Souls games more often. Which, if you love Souls games, why is that a bad thing? Even if the games they make aren't necessarily Miyazaki grade, they're still probably going to be pretty decent, and they're going to be what we love, what we've come to enjoy and know, even if they have a couple changes thrown in. So I think for the long-term health of the Souls-like genre, and also the short-term volume of Souls games that we could get, it's a really good thing that there are other people at Fromsoftware that Miyazaki would trust to try a game. Now, the third thing might actually be the most common argument that you hear when you suggest Dark Souls 4 might eventually happen one day, and that is the lore argument. People are quick to point out that Dark Souls 3 was the end, that the universe or the world basically burned down and there is nothing but nothing left, and so therefore there is no story that could be told past that. First off, people need to be a little bit more creative in the way that they think. Just because that was the end of that particular story does not mean that they could not tell a whole new story that is sort of in the same world, but not related to necessarily what came before. But that is just one option, okay? They have multiple other options that they could use that don't involve completely telling a whole new story. Because I don't know what it is about this story in particular, but people just seem to want to accept the end and not look at the other possibilities that are literally glaring right in front of their eyes. For one, at the end of the Ring City DLC, the painter paints a whole new world, and she says that she's going to name it after your character. So why could they not tell a story in this new world? Why could she not paint a brand new landscape, a whole new universe, and then a brand new story take place within that? And that would not affect the past lore that came before it, and it would open up a whole new avenue of potential stories they could tell. And that's just if they want to continue on into the future. There are also several time gaps within the story of Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3 that they could potentially tell some kind of prequel in. Now, none of this is to suggest that this is what they should do. All I'm pointing out is that from a lore perspective, Dark Souls is nowhere near done. There are multiple directions that they could take to make a brand new Dark Souls game. Now, you could say that these directions would suck and that you wouldn't like them and that you think they're stupid, but to say that there is no way to tell a story with a Dark Souls 4, that's just not true. And another thing was that at the end of Dark Souls 3, it's basically like the end of a cycle. And so who's to say a whole new cycle could not start? That's the point of cycles, is that it goes, but it also goes again. So I just really don't see why people want to fixate on Dark Souls 3 being the end. It definitely could be. They could let it lie and just and let it be as it is. But they definitely could pick it up and take it somewhere else. That's all I'm saying. Now, to kind of bring this all back in again, like I said at the beginning of the video, this is not to say that FromSoftware's next game is going to be Dark Souls 4. It could be Armored Core 7. It could be that this rumored game is a remaster of some kind. It could be that it's a brand new IP. We had the Spellbound rumor not too long ago. That could become a real thing. We don't know. Heck, it could be not a Souls game at all, or it could be a Kingsfield reboot. I've seen in my comments here recently in my videos about Dark Souls 4 that people seem to really want a Kingsfield reboot. So it could be that, or it could be something that none of us would even suspect. My point with this video is that Dark Souls 4 is nowhere near impossible, and that there's a lot of misinformation about it that is floating around the internet. And I think people just need to take a step back and realize that there are definitely viable options for a Dark Souls 4, and it could potentially happen. But I hope that you enjoyed the video and that you can at least see why I think that Dark Souls 4 is a possibility. Maybe I'm not completely crazy. I probably am. But if you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button. I'm trying to get to 2,000 subscribers before the end of the year. So jump on the train, help me reach my goal. And of course, let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think Dark Souls 4 is a possibility? Did any of my arguments land with you? Did they make sense? Or do you think that I'm just the dumbest YouTuber that's ever existed? But I think we can all agree that whatever the next FromSoftware game is, IGN will give it a 7.